Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks for joining us. We're continuing on the journey of 3D animation with Blender software. So part 4, today we're going to look at sculpting in Blender, which is going to be really neat. So if you haven't joined us before and you want to see the earlier parts, you can visit our website. I put it up here, tbmcs.ca, and you'll be able to go to our YouTube channel. You can see the past workshops there and check them out. So definitely do that. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. My name's Tom Stranad, and this is the Creator Space. So in terms of what we'll be looking at today, it is the Blender software. It is free, so feel free to go out there, download it, get it on your computer, and also, if you go to our website, you can get details on how you can book some of the computer systems that we have through our library partners. So, really excited to be able to bring this to you. So again, our partners, Canada Council for the Arts, and we have all our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Leon. Here we go, Leon.
All right, thank you, Tom. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for coming to see Blender, the workshop tutorial. And this time we are going to start working on how to do a different way of modeling. The last three workshop we were focusing on just like manipulating vertex, edges, and faces in your object. Now we are going to learn how to do it with sculpting. Essentially, it's similar how you're going to sculpt a clay in real life, except that you're doing it in 3D space. Yeah, so let's, as you can see right now on my screen, that I have like a rock that I created just really quickly, and you can see it looks like a clay, and it has more details and stuff like that compared to like a normal modeling. Now, if you remember what I talk about the triangle count and how like the more triangles in objects you have, the more details you can get it, but the heavier it will be to render. So like this one here specifically, if you go to the edit mode in this object here, as you can see, there's a lot of triangle in here. And generally you don't want this, especially for a games. If you're thinking about going to a games design, you really don't want your model to be this details, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to sculpt this, and then we're going to create another object on top of this, and then wrap it around this with the this other object will be like a low resolution, so that means like a last polygon. Then you wrap it on top of this really complicated sculpting, and then we can bake this sculpting into a normal map, so we can have something like a similar by using textures instead of this really detailed objects. Okay, so let's start the new scene. Let's go open file, new, just open into a general. And as you know, Blender will open with camera, with objects, and then a light. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to hide this too, because we're not using it at the moment. And again, depending on, before you're sculpting anything, is always good. At least my preference is to have the basic shape of that rock. So try to visualize it in a way that you get that really basic polygon look of the rock before you start sculpting it. So from this cube, I'm going to edit it, and then I'm going to subdivide, instead of subdividing it, I'm going to add more, more edges around the area here. Okay, so, and then I'm going to make this, I will make the cube into a basic shape of a rock that I want to model. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Scale this in sets like that. So Y. Okay. So, and I'm changing from the 3D space into the orthographic view. So that's something that I covered the last time in the previous workshop. So if you want to go and take a look at that, that'll be helpful to start working on it. All right, so just going to do a you know what? Let's make this scale this. See, I'm just doing a rough look of the rock. And I'm not going to spend too much time in here because you can spend, you essentially we're going to sculpt it to the shapes that we want to be at the final image. So I think this is okay for now. Let's switch into, now the next thing I will do is to subdivide this into, if you right click and then subdivide, and you can see the number cuts here, and let's say that will be, that's good enough to start. Oh yeah, that's another thing before I forget. It's good to, if you want to do sculpting, is better if you have a tablet, because the pressure sensitivity of the pen from the tablets will help you to help you sculpt better. So I mean, you can still sculpt with mouse, but I recommend it use a tablet if you do have one. So okay, this is a good start. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to object mode, and then on the top here you have layout, modeling, sculpting, UV editing. So obviously you just want to go to sculpting, or if you want to change it here, you can also choose it in this area here. So it's really up to you, which it doesn't really have any one way or the other. Is essentially you're going to the same direction. Now this is sculpting. This is all your sculpting tools that will help you to shape this into a rock. Now if you ever, some of you might tried sculpting before in real life, and you might familiar with some of the term here. If not, it's pretty much straightforward. And if you're still not not sure what specific things do, then you can always try it. And by experimenting, you'll understand where you're going from there. But I'll give you I'll let you know a few tools that I use to start sculpting that I use a lot when I'm sculpting. And hopefully that will help you to start to sculpt your object. Now, once you go into a sculpting mode, what I want you to do is this is your brush here. Next thing I want to do is going to dyno topology. So that's basically dynamic topology. So you want to check this, and then you press OK. Right, so and then you want to have now what's the dynamic topology? Essentially, like when you're sculpting, you don't want to worry about adding polygons or removing like edges or faces or stuff like that. You want to be like a very smooth transitions, like how you sculpt in real life. Dynamic topology will do that automatically for you. So it will allow you to add or remove edges as you're sculpting. Like adding triangles and removing triangles as you're trying to shape your object. That's what dynamic topology is. Now, the detail size is how much of those you will add it and how much while you're working. The higher the number, the less triangle it will add it, but also the less detail you can do. So by going lower, you can get more detail, and it's adding also a lot more triangles into your objects. So, and you can go to like 0.5, 0.1, or something like that if you can go to really detailed. But remember, not everybody has the same computer. The lower the details, like if you go to like 0.1, 0.5, your computer might have difficulty trying to calculate that. So if you don't have a very fast computer, I recommend it not going to 0.5. I don't recommend it going below 1. You can still get the pretty detailed object at 1 pixel, but anything lower than that, it will going to make your computer really slow. So right now at the beginning, I want to have a broad shape, so I'll leave it at 12. And the smooth shadings is basically every time you shape your object, it will be like really smooth. I'll show it to you a little bit later, but let's see. So, and then the next thing you want to do is here. Now, if you're working, this is basically it's mirroring my actions on the x-axis or right now. So whatever I do here, it will mirror to the other side. Because this rock is a very organic structure, you don't really want to have that. So what I want to do is I just want to click the X to remove it so I don't mirror every time I use the brush. And the next thing, if you want to click here to open your properties, next thing you want to do is go to your item, you go to property. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm still in the old version. So go here. If you see like underneath the dynamic topology, just on top of this, you see all this circle here. I like to have, this is to change your, and then if you press down here, you have the selections. I like to have the lighting, the shading of the lighting into a matte cap. And then I like to change the color into red. This will give me like a better, like once you start sculpting, you'll be able to see better compared to if you don't have this options here. Now, these two, if you like to use a different color, that's up to you, but I normally just use this color, the red one. And that will help me to look at the shape a lot better. Okay, without further ado, let's start sculpting. I'm gonna change into my my tablet here for a bit. Just give me a second. Okay. All right. So first thing I want to do is I'm just gonna go scrape the edges here to make it more shape. I'm just gonna do when scraping here, the scrape, and as you can see, it will give you now. When I'm doing this, you can see that it's giving like a look triangle. There's two ways that you can remove this by going to object mode and then have shade smooth. And you want to go to dynamic topology again, and then you want to have smooth shading. Then you can start, you see how smooth that is? So you don't have, now I'm just gonna scrape this really quickly to start giving the shape to my stone, my rock. Normally you don't want to have a flat bottom, but we're gonna have a ground later. We're gonna add the ground. So now, as you can see, I'm scraping the clay to give a better defining the shapes. And as I do this, I'm adding and removing, since I have the dynamic topology, I'm adding and removing triangle. And you can right click and change your strength. And I want to change my radius of my brush so it's more broad. Okay. Okay, so I will do the clay strip. I like this one here if I want to add something. Now, I don't want to have too much strength into that, so I'm going to have strength into 4. All right, so it's starting to look like the rock that I want to have. All right, just keep So next thing I do is can do the crease, reduce this brush size, and then I'll add the strength a little bit more. Get some. Now this is where you get a bit more detail. So you want to reduce this, let's say, to 5. As you can see, your rock will have, you can get a lot more details in your model. Now this is very so it's always good to start with a broad shape and work yourself down to more detail as you get more and more into the sculpting. Now, because rock is a very organic, so there's not really very like specific shape, which is a very good exercise to have, because you don't have to worry about too much about symmetry and perfect shape. And as you work as you work with, you can work with sculpting the rock. You'll see that you find a different way and how to experiment with different brush and what the brushes do. So let's go to strength 7 for details there. Now, obviously, you can spend like hours sculpting, depending on what kind of models that you want to do. It's like, it's you have to budget your time. If you're working on a deadline, then you have to worry about you don't want to spend too much time working on one object. Once you have a basic shape of the object that you want, generally you want to move on and work on another one. But if, let's say, if you're working on a characters, like the main characters of your project, then you want to spend more time sculpting them to get more details and stuff like that. But for any other object, you generally don't want to spend too much time. So right now I'm just working with scrape, the clay strips, and the crease. Those are the three the three brush that I normally use to create the basic shape of what I want to do. So just bring the strengths down. Oops. I have a different habits of keyframe. All right. The next thing I want to do is to what's next, smooth. So essentially, it is what it is. Said it's just to smooth your object. Now you don't want to overdo it. You just want to smooth a certain place that you think you can smooth. What's the crease? Okay. I'm just right now using your own artistic abilities to add a little details where you want it to be. Like, you don't need to be this detail. I'm just being a little bit picky with my with my rock. Just wanted to find this shape here. Scrape it. Okay. All right. I mean, that should be good. We don't want to spend too much time in here. So you can work on your rock objects or whatever it is that you want to sculpt more on your time. But for this purpose, we want to continue on and learn how to wrap another object on top of this rock, because you don't want to render this rock if you can, right? So next thing I wanted to go over is, once we have your objects, let's say in here we'll name it rock sculpt. So we'll make another object, cube, and then we'll size it the way to match our rock our sculpting. So scale Y, scale Z. Okay, you want to give a little bit, and that's pretty good. X. All right, so that's pretty much cover you putting the rock inside the cube here. Now what I want to do is to subdivide this into a reasonable amount. So let's say, oops, subdivide, let's see, 5 will be good. Let's just go with 5. Now, next thing we want to do, sorry about that. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we want to wrap this cube into the sculpting. How to do that is, if you go to the right here to your property, you can choose the modifier property, and you want to click add modifier, and you want to shrink wrap, deform, shrink wrap. Now, the target, if you choose here, target, you want to choose the rock sculpt. There you go. It still have that cube, but your the cube that you made is shrink wrap into the model of the sculpting. So let's name this rock low res. If you want to go to edit mode, it's still the cube here. That's the modifier. It will show you, like how the final look is without actually changing your main object. So your object is still technically a cube, but by using the modifier shrink wrap, the cube into. So if you, let's say you change your mind, you want to change something else, then you can always remove the modifier and it will retain your shape, your beginning shape. So this is very handy if you're not having a final look yet. But once you're having the final look, then I think this is pretty good. So what we want to do is we're going to apply this object, the cube. We apply the modifier. That means if you go to edit mode, it will just retain the shape. You're not going back to that normal cube again. So now it look like this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake the textures of the rock from the sculpting into this low resolutions object. So when you render it, you can still see that detail that you sculpt in your low resolutions objects. Okay, so how to do that is, let's go to your, let's divide this into, let's open to 3 different window, and let's put this one into, sorry, go to the top here, editor type. You want this to UV editor, and you want this one into the shader editor. All right. So first thing we want to do is to add some materials in the rock. So add materials, and you want to add new. Then that will create new material. Now in the UV editor, you want to click new, and you want to type normal. So we're going to bake a normal map in this UV editor. All right, so you got that normal. And next thing you know, next thing is going to your shader editor. You go to add texture, image textures. So, or if you don't know the shortcut key, you can just click on here, and then you can have that to do the same thing. The shortcut key is Shift A, if you need to know. But last week, the last few workshops, that should be covered. If you don't remember that, you can always go back to that and refer to that previous video. Okay, so once you have the image textures, you want to go here, and then you want to select normal. So this is your image textures normal. And once you get this select, oops, and you just choose it anywhere. Like right now, let's just put it on the desktop. Now, yeah, save image. Just put it on my desktop. So save the image. Okay, so now it's still black. So what we want to do, next thing we want to do is to unwrap this rock. So I will select the edges, how I want to open this. Now selecting this remember like how like unwrapping is basically unwrapping, like how you unwrap the skin of an object. So okay, so this is good. We'll right click and mark seams, and as you can see, it changes color into red. That's the seams where I'm going to stitch together the skin. So select all, and then press U, and then unwrap. As you can see, it's unwrapped nicely. All right, so I'm gonna center this. Now, next is to bake your normal texture. Now, in order to do that, we want to go open, we want to unhide the sculpt, and then so you have these two visible in your 3D. And you want to go to your render and make sure your render engine is in cycles. Now, and next thing you know, if in the cycles render engine, at the bottom here, you have the bake options. If you open that, you have right now the type is combined. So we want to click that and change that into normal. And we want to click the selected to active. And then the maximum ray distance is 1. The margin existing pixels, that's good. Everything else should be okay. The ray distance is how they shoot the and how to bake it. If you just use this options, that should give you a good big a good image for your normal map. Now, next thing you want to do is go to sampling. The higher the render, the more detail your image is. So in this case here, let's do 500. We don't need to go to too details. And then you're ready to bake. So you want to select the low resolution first, and then you want to select the sculpting after that. And then once you've done that, you want to bake it. Oh, sorry, it's the opposite. So you want to select the sculpt first, and then you want to select this the low resolutions. Sorry for that confusion. And then you want to bake. As you can see, it's texture baking. There's your normal map there. Now, you don't really need to do this, but like another, I want to bake another one, which is a roughness of it. And everything is good, render's good. Now, this is where it gets confusing. In roughness, we have to do the opposite. We have to select the low res first and then go to the rock sculpting after that. That's how I get confused. So, and then once you've done that, you want to click bake, and that's here, texture bake. It's baking your roughness. Oh, you know what? I forgot to say. So let's do that again. Let's do the normal again. Sorry about that. I get confused. All right, so sculpt low res, and then bake normal, bake. Gosh, this is where it gets confusing. So you want to select the low res first, and then the sculpt after that. once you bake it here, you want to go to image, you want to save. That will save as a normal. Now this is your normal, so the image there. So let's not worry about the roughness at the moment. What I'm gonna do is to open another image texture, and then I'm going to open. I downloaded a texture for rock here, which you can get at the CG Textures or textures.com. And then I just connected the color to the base color. And for the normal map, I want to create the vector, normal map, select the color to the color, and normal to normal. Okay, there you go. So let's hide this the sculpt image. Have this in shade smooth. And then next thing I want to do is to press Z, go to render. And you can't see right now because it's don't have the lights on. There you go. You have your lights on. Let's change this into a 3D viewport. Let's use for the light. With the light selected, let's move into sun and have 5, strength 5. And as you can see, if you play around by rotating your sun there, you can see the edges that you created from the sculpting, and actually define the textures. Now, if you move, the more light you have, the less you will see. But you can still see some of the normal pop in. So next thing I want to do, just get the modifier, subdivision surface, and let's say render 2, get a more smooth render. And voila, that's how you sculpt and transfer your sculpting into a low-res object, and then texture it, bake it, and add it to normal map to transfer your sculpting into like a low-res object. So yeah, if you move around with the shadows, you can see more and more defined sculpting edges there. Right, so that will conclude our quick introductions to sculpting. Hopefully it will help you to have a better understanding and help you with another tool to model characters or anything that you like to create. So good luck, and hopefully I'll be able to see some of your work out there. And thank you again for coming to this workshop. And I'm looking forward to see you next time. Tom?
Perfect. Thanks, Leon. Now, I just wanted to, there's one question I saw, and it was, is there a way to import 2D, like import a 2D image, like a photo, into Blender and then work with it, like as a reference or to create it into a 3D object?
Yeah, there is a way to do that. So first thing you want to do is to, okay, let me just open a new, let me save this. Let me open a new screen. Okay. So my way of doing it is you create a plane, and then you go to your front view and rotate your plane in z-axis. Sorry. Is it in, oh, sorry, in x-axis. Rotate it in x-axis 90 degree. And you just open that. And then what you want to do is you're going to material, and then just you unwrap first really quickly, and then you just click a new material, and then the same thing like how you put a textures, you just go to your image textures. Let's say so let's just use the normal one. And then so if you material preview, and you have that, and then you can use that as your reference when you're modeling. And then you have another object here, Q, then you can use. You can use this object here and then model whatever that you need to do to reference. So generally what people do is you make another, you make two, what do you call it again? At the two planes, and then you intersect the plane, like, so it rotates Y, rotates Z. So you intersect the plane like that. So this will be your front view, and this is for your right view. And that's generally what people use to in order to help them to model, to have this. So if you go to the right, left view, to the front view and left view, you have those different images to help you as a reference. Hope that answered your question.
Check out our website, tbmcs.ca. You can go to our YouTube channel. And yeah, so thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks, Leon. Another great session. And I love learning with everyone too. There's so much information, but it's I really enjoy watching how things can come together and come alive. So thanks for going over the sculpting, and really informative. So so in terms of again, just want to thank all our partners in making this project happen: Canada Council for the Arts, all our library partners, Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library, and of course Leon. Thanks again, and we'll see you guys soon. Thanks for joining us.